When single dad Jake saw a crying soldier and her twin daughters sleeping in a diner booth at midnight, he made a split-second decision that shocked everyone. "You're coming with me," he told the stranger. What happened next changed 4 lives forever. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. It was 11:47 p.m. when Jake Morrison walked into Mel's diner with his 6-year-old son Danny, both of them exhausted from the long drive. They had been traveling for 8 hours, moving from their old apartment in Phoenix to start fresh in a small town called Cedar Falls. Jake's construction job had dried up, and he'd heard there was work here. The diner was nearly empty except for a few late-night truckers and an elderly waitress who looked like she'd been working since the place opened. But in the corner booth, something caught Jake's attention that made his heart clench. A young woman in military fatigues sat hunched over a cup of coffee, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Beside her, 2 little girls around Danny's age were curled up asleep on the booth bench, using their mother's jacket as a blanket. The girls had identical faces, twins, and even in sleep they looked thin and tired. Jake had served 2 tours in Afghanistan before Danny was born. He recognized the uniform, the posture, and most importantly, the look of someone who had nowhere left to go. "Daddy, why is that lady crying?" Danny whispered, tugging on Jake's sleeve. "I don't know, buddy. Let's get our food and give her some space." But as they sat down, Jake couldn't stop watching the soldier. She kept checking her phone, then putting her head in her hands. The twins stirred occasionally and she would gently stroke their hair, whispering something that made them settle back into sleep. When the waitress brought Jake and Danny their burgers, Jake quietly asked, "The woman in the corner, how long has she been here?" The waitress, whose name tag read Dolores, sighed. "About 4 hours. Bought 1 coffee and keeps refilling it. Those babies are hungry, but she keeps saying she's waiting for someone." Jake's stomach twisted. He knew that look, that desperation. After Danny's mother left them 2 years ago, he'd been in similar situations, too proud to ask for help but running out of options. "Daddy," Danny said softly, "she looks sad like you did when Mommy left." Jake's heart broke a little at his son's innocent observation. Danny was too young to fully understand what had happened, but he remembered the pain. "Yeah, buddy? She does." Jake made a decision. He stood up and walked over to the soldier's table. "Excuse me," he said gently. "I'm Jake Morrison. I served in Afghanistan. Are you okay?" The woman looked up with red-rimmed eyes. She was young, probably mid-20s, with short brown hair and the kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than just being tired. "I'm Sergeant Lisa Chen," she said, automatically straightening up despite her emotional state. "And no, I'm not okay." "What's wrong?" Lisa looked at her sleeping daughters, then back at Jake. "I just got back from deployment 3 days ago. My ex-husband, he emptied our bank account and disappeared while I was overseas. Left these divorce papers and an eviction notice." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. "He left you and the girls with nothing?" "Nothing," Lisa confirmed, her voice breaking. "I've been staying in cheap motels, but I'm down to my last $40. I called my sister in Denver. She was supposed to wire me money so we could get bus tickets. But she just texted me. Her husband lost his job. She can't help." One of the twins stirred and opened her eyes. "Mommy? Are we going home now?" Lisa's composure completely cracked. "Soon, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." The little girl, she couldn't have been more than 5, closed her eyes trustingly. She believed her mother would figure it out the way children always do. Jake looked at this broken family and saw himself and Danny 2 years ago. He saw every military family he'd known who struggled after deployment. He saw people who deserved better than the hand they'd been dealt. "What are your daughters' names?" Jake asked. "Emma and Sophie. They're twins, just turned 5 last month while I was..." Lisa's voice trailed off. "Lisa," Jake said firmly, "you're coming with me." Lisa stared at him. "What?" "You and the girls. You're coming home with me and Danny." I can't do that. You don't even know us." Jake sat down across from her. "I know you're a soldier who served our country. I know you're a mother trying to protect her children. I know you're out of options and too proud to ask for help. That's enough." Lisa shook her head. "You could be anyone. I can't just go home with a stranger." Jake pulled out his phone and showed her his military ID, his driver's license, and several photos of him and Danny. "My name is Jake Morrison. I'm a single dad, a veteran, and someone who's been exactly where you are right now. I have a 3-bedroom house 20 minutes from here. You and the girls can stay as long as you need." "Why would you do this?" Jake looked at Danny, who was watching from their table with wide, concerned eyes. "Because 2 years ago when Danny's mom left us, A stranger helped me when I had nowhere to go. Because we're both soldiers and we take care of our own. Because those little girls don't deserve to sleep in a diner booth. Lisa was crying again, but this time it wasn't from despair. I don't know how to repay you. You don't need to repay me. You just need to let me help. Jake called Danny over and introduced him to Lisa and the sleeping twins. Danny, with the easy acceptance of childhood, immediately declared that Emma and Sophie could share his toys. An hour later, Jake was loading Lisa's few possessions into his truck while she carefully carried the sleeping twins to the back seat. Danny insisted on giving the girls his favorite blanket, so they won't be cold in the new house. The drive to Jake's house was quiet. Lisa stared out the window, probably wondering if she was making a terrible mistake. Jake understood, he would have been suspicious too if their roles were reversed. Lisa, he said softly, I know this is scary, but I promise you're safe. We're just one veteran helping another. When they arrived at Jake's modest two-story house, Lisa looked surprised. This is really nice. It belonged to my grandfather, Jake explained. Left it to me when he died. It's nothing fancy, but it's home. Inside, Jake showed Lisa and the girls to the guest room. Emma and Sophie woke up briefly, just long enough to be amazed by the bunk beds Jake had built for when Danny had friends over. This is like a castle, Emma whispered in awe. A princess castle, Sophie agreed. Lisa tucked them in, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughters sleep peacefully for the first time in days. In the kitchen, Jake made coffee while Lisa sat at the table, still processing what had just happened. Why? She asked again. Really? Why are you doing this? Jake was quiet for a moment. After Danny's mom left, I was working construction but barely making rent. Danny got sick, bronchitis, and missed a week of daycare. I couldn't work, couldn't pay the daycare fees, and got behind on everything. He poured the coffee and sat down across from her. I was at the grocery store trying to figure out how to buy formula and diapers with $12, when this elderly woman behind me in line just paid for everything. $200 worth of baby supplies and groceries. Lisa listened intently. I tried to refuse, but she said her son had been in the military and she knew how hard it could be. She said the only way I could repay her was to help someone else someday when I was able. And tonight was that someday? Tonight was that someday, Jake confirmed. Over the next few weeks, Lisa and the girls settled into an unexpected routine. Jake worked construction during the day while Lisa job hunted and watched Danny after school. The twins and Danny became inseparable, turning the quiet house into a home filled with laughter and chaos. Lisa found work as a dispatcher for the local police department, not her dream job, but it paid decent money and had good benefits. More importantly, it was stable. I can start looking for an apartment, Lisa told Jake one evening after the kids were in bed. Jake looked up from the bills he was paying at the kitchen table. Do you want to? What do you mean? I mean, are you looking for an apartment because you want your own place or because you think you should? Lisa was quiet for a long moment. The girls love it here. Danny's like the big brother they never had. And you? She trailed off. And me what? And you make me feel safe for the first time in years. Jake set down his pen and looked at her. Really looked at her. Somewhere between that first night at the diner and now, Lisa had become more than just someone he was helping. She had become someone he cared about. Someone he looked forward to seeing at the end of each day. Lisa, he said carefully, what if you didn't look for an apartment? What if you just stayed? As roommates? Jake's heart hammered in his chest. Maybe we could start as roommates and see what happens. Lisa smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. I'd like that. 6 months later, Jake came home from work to find the house unusually quiet. He called out but no one answered. Then he heard whispers and giggles coming from the living room. When he walked in, Danny, Emma, and Sophie jumped out from behind the couch shouting, "Surprise!" The room was decorated with handmade decorations, and Lisa stood in the center holding a cake. What's all this? Jake asked, laughing. It's our family anniversary, Danny announced proudly. It's been 6 months since Emma and Sophie and their mom came to live with us. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. The kids wanted to celebrate the day we became a family. Jake looked around at the 3 children who were bouncing with excitement, at Lisa who had gone from broken to beautiful, at the house that had transformed from quiet and lonely to warm and full of life. We are a family, aren't we? He said wonderfully. The best kind, Lisa replied. The kind we chose. A year later, Jake and Lisa got married in the backyard of their house, with Danny as best man and the twins as flower girls. The ceremony was small, just a few friends, Jake's parents who drove in from Oregon, and Dolores from the diner, who had become like a grandmother to all three kids. During his vows, Jake looked at Lisa and said, "I thought I was rescuing you that night at the diner. But really you rescued me. You and the girls brought our house back to life." Lisa's vows were simple. You saw a family in trouble and said, "You're coming with me." You didn't just give us a place to stay, you gave us a place to belong. 5 years after that night at the diner, the Morrisonshire household was beautifully chaotic. Danny was 11 and had become the protective big brother Lisa's girls had always needed. Emma had discovered a love for soccer and was the star of her team. Sophie was the family artist, covering every wall with her drawings. Lisa had been promoted to police communications supervisor, and Jake had started his own construction company. They had saved enough money to add on to the house, giving each child their own room while keeping the bunk beds for sleepovers. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the kids play in the yard, Lisa brought up something that had been on her mind. "Jake, do you ever think about that night? About how different things could have been?" Jake wrapped his arm around her. "Sometimes. What made you trust me enough to come home with us?" Lisa was quiet for a moment. Desperation partly. But mostly it was Danny. Danny? The way he looked at my girls with such concern, even though he didn't know them. The way he immediately offered to share his blanket. I figured any man raising a child that kind couldn't be dangerous. "And you were right?" Lisa laughed. "You're the least dangerous person I know. You're also the strongest, kindest, most stubborn man I've ever met." "Stubborn?" "You wouldn't take no for an answer that night." "Good thing," Jake said, pulling her closer. That weekend they drove to the diner where it all began. Dolores was still working there, now in her 70s but still sharp as ever. "Well, look who's back," she called when she saw them. "My favorite family." The kids ran to hug her while Jake and Lisa slid into the same booth where Lisa had been crying 5 years earlier. "You know," Dolores said as she poured their coffee, "in 40 years of working here, I've seen a lot of people at their lowest points. But I've never seen anything like what you two did that night." "What do you mean?" Lisa asked. "Most people, when they see someone hurting, they feel bad but they don't act. They think, someone should help that person, but they don't think, I should help that person. Jake didn't just feel sorry for you, he did something about it." Jake shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have done the same thing." Dolores shook her head. "No, honey. They wouldn't have. That's what made it special." As they drove home that evening, Emma asked from the back seat, "Mommy, why was that lady calling Daddy special?" Lisa looked at Jake, then turned to face the children. "Because 5 years ago, when we had nowhere to go, Daddy saw us and decided we belonged with his family. Not everyone would have done that." "Why not?" Sophie asked with 5-year-old logic. "Because it's scary to help strangers," Danny said wisely. "But Daddy says family isn't just about blood. It's about choosing to take care of each other." Jake caught Lisa's eye in the rearview mirror. She was crying but they were happy tears. That night, after the kids were in bed, Jake and Lisa sat in their kitchen, the same kitchen where they'd had their first real conversation 5 years ago. "No regrets?" Jake asked. "Only one," Lisa said. Jake's heart skipped. "What?" "I regret that I can't go back and thank that scared, broken woman who trusted you that night. I want to tell her that everything turned out better than she ever dared to hope." Jake reached across the table and took her hand. "I think she knows." Lisa smiled. "I think you're right." Later, as they got ready for bed, Jake looked at the family photos lining the hallway. Pictures of camping trips, birthday parties, school plays, soccer games, all the beautiful ordinary moments that make up a life. "Lisa," he said softly, "do you think the kids understand how lucky we are?" "I think they understand that they're loved," Lisa replied. "And that's all kids really need to know." Jake thought about that as he turned off the lights. Love was what had started this whole thing. His love for Danny making him recognize another parent in crisis. Lisa's love for her daughters making her trust a stranger. The kids' capacity for love making them instantly accept each other as siblings. "Jake," Lisa whispered in the darkness. "Yeah. Thank you. For seeing us that night. For not just walking away. Thank you for trusting me. For letting me love you and the girls." "Always," Lisa whispered back. And as Jake drifted off to sleep in the house that had transformed from empty to overflowing, he thought about how sometimes the most important moments in life happen in the most ordinary places. Sometimes a diner at midnight becomes the place where a family is born. Sometimes a stranger becomes the person who saves you. And sometimes, when you think you're helping someone else, you discover that they're actually helping you. Because that's the thing about real families, they don't always start with birth certificates or marriage licenses. Sometimes they start with 3 words, You're coming with me. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, those words change everything.